Today we are in the middle of discussing the laws of being a mensch, and today we're going to talk about the ethic of haste not, waste not. Okay, so what's fascinating is the Torah deals with so many of the issues that today are incredibly relevant, and today are being talked about all over the place, but you almost don't find a source for it in anywhere else in history, really. When I was in social work school, I remember on the very first day of classes, we took a history of social work policy, and the professor said to us, who can tell me when the first set of laws, of social welfare laws, was ever enacted? And the correct answer that he was looking for, actually, not the correct answer, but the answer that he was looking for was in 1604, the laws known as the Elizabethan Poor Laws, made by Queen Elizabeth. And I'm thinking, really? Because she did make up a whole series of laws to help the poor in the country of Britain at the time. However, the Torah has laws written in there for the social welfare of those who are unfortunate, and that was written 3,300 years ago. So we've been way ahead of the bell curve on a lot of these issues, and today we talk about a world that's very environmentally conscious and very aware of use and overuse, and what we're going to see today is that the Torah deals with this way, way in advance. But in order to flush it out, we're going to try to bring something really interesting and really different and see what we can learn from it and see how we can apply it to actual halacha. It's going to be a really interesting halachic question, Jewish law. How would Jewish law rule on this? And it's based on something that's an interesting idea. Okay. By raise of hand, has anybody here ever heard of la tomatina? It's like la cucaracha, but it's with tomatinas instead of cucarachas. But in any case, la tomatina is a festival. And this festival is held every year in the city of Burnham, which is in Spain. Okay, this is what la tomatina looks like. Okay, if you're noticing a lot of red projectiles flying through the air, you are correct. And guess what those projectiles are? Tomatoes. They're not cucarachas. That's correct. They are tomatoes. Okay? So La Tomatina is a food fight held on the last Wednesday of every August in the city of Burnham, which is in the region of Valencia. Okay? Now, tens of thousands of participants come from all over the world, okay, to fight in a brutal battle of the tomatoes, where more than 100 metric tons of tomatoes are thrown at various people. Okay? Now, the way it works is, we're going to give you a little background on this festival, but first, of course, before we talk about the wanton destruction of tomatoes, I would like to thank the good Lord who makes those tomatoes, and indeed makes everything in this world, including Coca-Cola, but not directly. God does not directly make Diet Coke. He makes amazing H2O, which is really good and healthy. And then we humans, almost like tomatina, we destroy it and turn it into Diet Coke. But some days I'm just in a Diet Coke mood. So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. So the week-long festival called La Tomatina features music festivals and parades and dancing and fireworks. On the night before the tomato fight, participants of the festival compete in a paella cooking event where they cook this tomato dish, this traditional Spanish tomato dish. And between 20 and 40,000 tourists come from all over the world. Of course, Burnham is a very small city. The whole population of Burnham is only 9,000. So we're talking about the city of 9,000 can become a city of 50,000 for this 1 week. Okay? There is limited accommodations in Burnham, so people stay all the way up to the main city of Valencia, which is 38 kilometers away, and then come in every day for the festivities by train. Okay? And in preparation for the dirty mess that happens on the main day, the shopkeepers all put up these big blue tarps, okay? Because tomatoes, as you well know, stain, right? And they're stains that are hard to get out. So they don't only stain clothing and shirts, they stain buildings as well. So the people who live in Burnham, the shopkeepers, they put up these massive blue tarps in preparation for the carnage. Okay, what happens on the day of the main festival fight, the main food fight? Here's what happens. It all starts with greasing the pole. At about 10 a.m. on the morning of this big fight of La Tomatina, the last Wednesday in August, and by the way, you can still book your tickets now. Okay, so during the morning, you already see trucks streaming towards Bunal filled with tomatoes, okay? And they head towards the main plaza in the town Plaza del Pueblo. Now, the tomatoes come from a region called Extremadura, which is a region in Spain where they're a little bit cheaper, the tomatoes. And technically, the festival is not supposed to begin until one brave soul has climbed up to the top of this pole and retrieved a ham that they have hanging from the top of the pole. However, to make it a little bit more complicated, they grease the pole. As you can tell, they cover the pole with grease. So if it's hard to climb up a telephone pole, which it is, it's a lot harder to climb up a telephone pole when it's covered in grease. Okay? Okay. So about 10 a.m. though, okay, there's a horn that goes off. And that symbolizes that you can begin trying to reach the ham at the top of the pole. If you're wondering what that looks like, people trying to reach the top of the pole, this is what it looks like. Okay? It's literally a pyramid of human beings stepping all over each other, trying to climb up the pole. If you can see at the top, there's like a little ham tied up. The reality is no one ever gets the ham. Okay? That's what it is. So what do they do instead? They got to start it without the ham being taken. Now the tomatoes are brought in on dump trucks, and no one in the city knows exactly where each dump truck is going to stop. The drivers are given predetermined coordinates where they're supposed to go to in the city, but they're not allowed to tell anybody. And they drive up, and they just wait there. Sometimes they've used as much as 140 tons of tomatoes. 140 tons of tomatoes, which is close to 3... It's a lot. A lot of tomatoes. Okay. Now, what happens is if no one gets the ham, then the way they start the fight is at exactly noon, they blast off these massive water cannons. And when they do that, it's a sign for the dump trucks to dump off their load. So here's a picture of the dump trucks. As you can see, there's dump trucks filled with tomatoes, and you can't see the picture so clearly, but there are people on top of the dump trucks, like people are trying to get to the tomatoes early, right? They didn't come here across the world all the way to just wait patiently till noon to start throwing tomatoes at each other. So everyone wants to get into the trucks and start throwing early. So you have to have people in the trucks pushing people away. Okay, and then at noon, when the water cannons blast, wherever the dump trucks are, anywhere in the city, they just lift up their backs and drop off their entire cargo of tomatoes into the city. This is what it looks like while it's going on. By the time it's over, as you can see in the corner, the streets are literally running with tomatoes to the point where people can almost like swim in it, okay? And you can see, if you look at the pictures, they're just people throwing it at each other. There's projectiles flying through the air. Everyone's covered in red. There are certain rules. There are certain rules, okay? For starters, they highly encourage that you wear safety goggles. Okay? It's sort of like a scientific experiment, right? So you're supposed to wear safety goggles, number one. In addition, you're supposed to squish the tomato first and break it before throwing it so it's not as hard, right? Like a broken tomato, just like, whereas a non-broken tomato can actually hit somebody with a lot more impact. So you're supposed to squish them first before throwing them. It's not always done. Another rule is that you're not allowed to bring anything else into this fight that can provoke a more serious brawl, like a glass bottle, which is generally not done also. And the last rule is that you're not allowed to rip off anyone's clothing, and the crowd tends to ignore this one to a certain degree. So, after exactly 1 hour, the fight is over. The water cannons are fired once more, and that signals the end. At this point, no more tomatoes are thrown, okay? So instead what happens is the cleaning process begins, okay? And as you can see here in this picture, there are trucks that move through the population with these massive water cannons just spraying down all the participants, okay? And then traditionally the participants make their way towards a little river at the edge of town and they're sprayed down more. And of course the shopkeepers begin the cleanup process. Okay, this is La Tomatina. How did this start? How did this brawl start? It's unclear. The history of La Tomatina is unclear. It's been around since roughly 1944, 1945. Some theories of how La Tomatina started was it started as a local food fight amongst friends, a juvenile class war, a volley of tomatoes from the bystanders at a carnival parade, a practical joke on a bad musician, the anarchic aftermath of an accidental truck spillage. These are all theories that are given down. Whatever exactly started it, they're not exactly clear, but we do know that it went on for decades. The only time that it did not go on was during the Francisco period in Spanish history, when there was a little bit more of a crackdown on anything without religious significance, and this definitely does not have any religious significance. Okay, so now my question to you is, what do you think is the Jewish perspective on La Tomatina?
Nourish type.
By raise of hand, if you think it's okay, raise your hand, say yes. Wow. By raise of hand, if you think it's not okay, raise your hand if you think it's not okay. Raise your hand if you really think it's not okay, but you plan on going and you didn't raise your hand at any point. It's like one of those things, I really think it's kind of cool, but it's like saying I'm a Trump supporter. I don't want to. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay. So there's obviously a few different elements over here. Obviously, anything that involves glass bottles, not kosher. Anything that involves ripping off other people's clothing in a crazy melee is also 100% not kosher. But in terms of the waste of tomatoes, that's really the main factor here that we're going to talk about. So imagine if no one took off, and if there was no extra rowdiness besides the throwing of tomatoes. How will we feel about this? Okay, so Judaism does have a concept that talks about this. And okay, so by the way, let's assume there was no glass bottle throwing, there was no ripping off other people's shirts or whatever. Would it then be okay? By raise of hand, if you think it would then be okay. Just me? Alrighty, alright, let's look at it. What is the source in the Torah for not wasting? If you look at your source sheet, source number 1, Deuteronomy 20:19. When you shall besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, to capture it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, for you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Trees were made for eating their fruit, not for cutting them down. Is the tree of the field a man to go into battle before you? So this is a very interesting law. The Torah is telling you, this is the book of Deuteronomy. Mind you, the book of Deuteronomy was written before the Jewish people went into the land of Israel. It's the last sort of hurrah from Moses. Moses, before he passes, he gives about a month and a week worth of classes. And in it, he includes a lot of laws that are going to be very pertinent once they go into the land of Israel. One of those laws are the proper laws of war. The Jewish people are going to have to go into the land of Israel, conquer it from the local inhabitants. So one of the laws of war is that you are not allowed to cut down fruit trees to make it into siege equipment, right? So back in the day when people went to war, they would use sort of these massive various siege equipment. They would build towers so they can get over a city wall. They would build battering rams, all sorts of other ballistas. So you are not allowed to cut down fruit trees for this. This mitzvah is specifically referring to fruit trees because it says, for you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Now, only fruit trees can you eat from, unless you're strange, in which case you eat regular trees too, but that's okay. We don't judge over here. But in any case, so the Torah says, you are not allowed to cut down fruit trees to make siege equipment. Is that tree a human being that you're going to send it out to war? What did that tree ever do to you, so to speak? Now there's a book called the Minchas Chinuch, the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch, the Book of Education, is a book anonymously written in the 13th century in Spain, and it goes through all the mitzvahs in the Torah and explains for each one the who, what, when, where, why. As a matter of fact, we've discussed some of the the descriptions from the Sefer HaChinuch before. So, Mitzvah 529, okay, Mitzvah 529, it's the book of Deuteronomy, it's towards the end. He goes in the order as it's found in the Torah. So, Mitzvah 529 in the book of education is the following. Please read in your source sheets. Number 2, that we refrain from cutting down trees when we besiege a city to distress the people in it, right? Why do you besiege a people? To stress them out and make them surrender without war and to pain their hearts, right? Because again, the idea of a siege, ideally, is that you siege them, they have no communication coming in or out, they've got no supplies coming in or out, they get stressed out, there's pain in their hearts, they're afraid, they start to get a little hungry, and they raise the white flag. However, you're not allowed to cut down trees. And on this it says, Deuteronomy 20:19, you shall not destroy its trees, and you shall not cut down. So this is the basic prohibition. But now, the Sefer HaChinuch takes it one step further, okay? And like it, included in this prohibition is that one may not cause any form of loss, such as burning or ripping clothing, or breaking any utensil for nothing. You get angry, you break a dish, not allowed. We'll talk more about things done out of anger. Okay? Continues the Sefer HaChinuch, and on these matters, and anything like it, something that involves destruction, the sages would always say in the Talmud, but he transgresses because of Baal Tashchit, you shall not destroy. So while the Torah uses the words Baal Tashchit, you shall not destroy, to refer to you shall not destroy the trees, the Talmud indeed expands that definition to not only include trees, but to include all other manners of wasteful destruction. And the book of education, the Sefer HaChinuch, when describing this, brings this down as well. Now, by the way, it's a fascinating detour. When we talk about the Jewish laws of war, Maimonides actually has a section dealing with the laws of war. And in 1982, when Israel was fighting with Lebanon and Syria and Hezbollah, at one point the IDF placed the city of Beirut under siege. And they basically had soldiers all around it. They were trying to flush out the terrorists who were inside. And during that siege, Rav Goren, who was then the chief rabbi of Israel, you may remember Rav Goren, he was the rabbi of the paratroopers, who was the person who liberated the wall in 1967, right? The famous picture of Rav Goren at the Kotel with the shofar, that was Rav Goren. He was the rabbi who was along with the paratroopers unit that finally reclaimed the Kotel in 1967. So in 1982, Rav Goren is the chief rabbi of Israel, and he writes a letter, which was published in Hatzofeh, which was one of the main Israeli newspapers, saying, one of the Jewish laws of war is that you're never allowed to siege a city on all four corners. The law says you got to leave a little opening so that people who don't want to be part of this can get out, so to speak. So he wrote that this was not okay by Jewish rules of law. There was another rabbi, Rav Shaul Yisraeli, who was another rabbi. He wrote back another article saying that it is allowed. It became an amazing debate going on in real time in 1982 while the IDF was at war, which is fascinating to know that a group of soldiers in the modern era is literally dealing with, is this type of siege halachically allowed by the Torah or not? What other nation in the world is looking to their Bible to determine how they go to war? Well, other than the jihadists, but I guess in the other way. Okay, So that is the mitzvah that we were colloquially referred to as Baal Tashchis. You shall not destroy. Which again, while the Torah used it in describing do not destroy the fruit trees in the area that you siege, the rabbis expanded that scope to include all forms of wanton destruction. Now, why do we have this mitzvah? So, luckily, the Book of Education, the Sefer HaChinuch, not only does he tell you what the mitzvah is, he tells you why the mitzvah is. So he continues. That's why you'll see source number 3, which is I bid. Anybody know what I bid, by the way, stands for I beat him, which is, not I beat him, like I beat them, but I beat him, the Latin term, which means the same place. Okay, so it's still in that Book of Education. The purpose of this mitzvah is to teach us to love that which is good and worthwhile and cling to it. So that good becomes a part of us and we will avoid all that is evil and destructive. If God put something in the world, He put it there for a constructive purpose. And therefore, we should not destroy it. We should sense the goodness in everything, and by destroying it, we're throwing away good, so to speak. This is the way of the righteous and those who improve society, who love peace and rejoice in the good in people and bring them close to Torah. That nothing, not even a grain of mustard, should be lost to the world, that they should regret any loss or destruction that they see, and if possible, they will prevent any destruction that they can. Not so are the wicked, who are like demons, who rejoice in the destruction of the world, and they are destroying themselves. So the Sefer HaChinuch, the Book of Education, tells us basically the idea that things in this world are here, they were created by God, they were put here for a purpose and a reason, and if you are good, you see the good in other things, not just other people, but indeed in other things, and you don't want to destroy that good, take away that value, erase the purpose that that thing holds in the world. Not so are the evil. The evil people, they don't see good or value in things. They are destructive. They break down good. They break down good when they're mean to other people. They break down good when they're gossiping and breaking apart relationships. They break down good when they steal. They break down good when what they're doing is they're involved in breaking things down. They're a destructive force, like the demons. The demons are a destructive force. However we understand demons, demons most definitely do not carry pitchforks. But the idea of a demon, the idea of a shindalet is what's called the shade. There are destructive forces in this world. And when you go about wantonly destroying something, you're saying, I'm on their team. Who are like demons. Guess what happens? This is actually a video from YouTube. But the video is not attached to this PowerPoint. What do you think happens in this video next? The guy probably gets out of his Jeep and gives the guy in the car a soda, right? No. He drives over the car and destroys the car. As a matter of fact, they have events. They have these events where people go to, it's called crash derbies or something like that, where they pack a stadium, and in the stadium, what do you see? Big things destroying little things. Like trucks, look at this. And people are standing around, yeah! Drive over another one. It's an amazing thing. Thousands of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people just coming out to watch big trucks smashing and rolling over other trucks. I mean, look at this. This is a pickup truck. It had a life. You know, and maybe it's not working so well right now, but there's a way. There's a certain glee to the destruction of people who go to just watch things being smashed to smithereens. Okay. So far, based on this, what would you say about La Tomatina? Bad, 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 right? I would assume at this point, right? You would say demonic, bad, wrong, okay. It's a little bit complicated. Believe it or not, it's a little bit complicated. Let's read a little bit further in your source sheet. The exceptions. Now remember, the Sefer HaChinuch tells you what the mitzvah is, why it is, where it applies. So the laws of this mitzvah are what the sages have said in the Talmud, in Bava Kama, page 91b. The Torah only forbid cutting down fruit trees when it's done in a destructive manner. But for sure, it is permitted to cut them down if you find some purpose in it, such as if its wood is very valuable and this person wants to sell it, or if he wants to remove a harm, such as when this tree is harming the trees around it that are better than it. So sometimes you get an infestation. Right? You have a tree in an orchard, and that tree gets some kind of, Spanish moss or whatever it is. You leave that tree around, and all the other trees are going to go down. You don't say, well, you can't destroy a fruit tree. So again, or if it is damaging other fields around it, in all these scenarios, and anything similar to it, it is permitted. So we get into a very complicated question over here. Because it's not only saying if it's outright damaging others. That was one example. If your tree is outright damaging other trees, either the roots are very aggressive and they're getting into the roots of other trees and it's taking away all their nutrients, or if it's got some type of infestation. But it also says here, it says such as if its wood is very valuable and this person wants to sell it. What about, for example, if I want to build a home? Bought an acre of property. And I want to build a home, right? No, actually I didn't buy an acre of property. Buy an acre of property, build the house wherever you want on that property. I bought a quarter of an acre. I want to build a house for my family to live, but there's a tree in the middle. Now, by the way, it's very interesting. Kabbalistically, there are very negative energies associated with cutting down a fruit tree, even if it's for a good reason. I know of certain people, I know a guy was building his house, and he literally made his house sort of like bend around a tree that had been growing there for many years. And I know of a synagogue. There was a synagogue in Brooklyn that they were in the middle of rebuilding, so temporarily they moved across the street. Temporarily, of course, if you're waiting to build your synagogue, temporarily could be about 12 years, right? They start building, they run out of money, then they start again, and then they get a permit problem, and they start again, and stop. So it was about a 10, 12-year process. So in the meantime, they moved across the street, and there was two buildings that sort of connected them, but in between them was a tree. And I remember they did not want to cut down this tree, and literally they had the tree coming up through the floor of the synagogue. There was like a little platform built around it, and then it went out through the top. So you're middle of praying in your services, and there's a tree going through the synagogue. Now, of course, many people would think that's modern art, right? There was a story this past, I think it was last weekend, in MoMA, San Francisco, right? So the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. So there was a guy there. He was like a teenager, maybe he's, early 20s, and he was just sitting around. And he wanted to relax for a second. He took off his glasses. Okay, he took off his glasses and he said, "Let's see what happens." And he put them down on the floor next to the wall. And before you know it, someone says, "Hey, look! Look at those glasses. Is that a new installation here?" Wow, that's such beautiful art. And before you know it, there's literally pictures and videos of this. People are standing around in awe, taking pictures of this new installation, because it's a very artsy kind of place, MoMA, right? They're very apt and liable to install a new piece of artwork without telling anybody. And if you're an art cognoscenti, right, you've got to be able to recognize that pair of glasses, that's not glasses. You are so plebeian. You think it's just glasses? It's art. And before you know it, there's crowds, almost it's like a Mona Lisa, you know? People are standing around and taking pictures of it, videos of it, debating the merits of this particular form of glasses and how it was placed on the floor. Why is it on the floor? What was the artist's intention? It's amazing. Yes, I believe most of modern art is the emperor's clothing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, right? If you have a piece of art on the wall that is a blue painting with a little white speck on the bottom and you sell it for $8 million, I'm sorry, that is not art. But whatever. But for many people that is, and I respect them in all other regards.
What about trimming the tree? What if it's over someone's property, it's causing harm? There are little berries that are slippery, people have slipped on it.
I got a feeling that you have this experience yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, so you are allowed to trim the tree. You're not, and again, by Jewish law, you're allowed to cut down the tree. That says it right here.
Can you tell my name?
In the Book of Education. But, again, Kabbalistically, there's a lot of negative energies associated with cutting down a fruit tree, even if you need to. But the point is, here, it makes a very powerful statement over here. Here in the Book of Education, the Sefer HaChinuch, it says, if it's wood, it's very valuable and someone wants to cut it down. So we now start to see that you're not allowed to totally waste something, but if there's value in destroying it or cutting it down and turning it into wood, then you're allowed to do it. Now we start getting to a whole different set of questions. Let's look at the town of Bunal. How many people live in the town of Bunal? You guys remember?
9,000.
9,000. How many tourists come?
20 to 40.
20 to 40,000. And they come for a week. Not everyone comes for the whole week. I'm sure a lot of people just come on the final day. Do you know how much revenue that is? They come to the town. They stay in the hotels. They eat in the restaurants. They buy the worthless cups and mugs and trinkets and magnets and t-shirts. Right? They spend tons of money. Why do you think those shopkeepers are willing to put up with it? Every year we got to put up the tarps and cover our shops and then spray it all down. Because 40,000 people coming for a week, that could bring millions and millions and millions of dollars. What do you think it costs for 140 tons of tomatoes? Now obviously they're not buying the premium tomatoes, like the kind that you would find in a high-end, fruit and vegetable store, right? It's amazing. You go to some stores and the fruits and vegetables, it's just like, every one is like perfect. Right? So they're not buying those. They're buying all the runts of the litter, so to speak, right? They're buying the grade C. The ones that, what happens to them? They're buying the ones that are so bad, they've got scarring, they've got bites, they've got this. These are the ones that would not get sold at high-end stores. They wouldn't get sold at middle, they wouldn't get sold anywhere as a vegetable. They would get turned into tomato juice, sauce. Right, that's the kind. It's like grade C. It gets turned into tomato sauce, which, by the way, it does if you saw the pictures, right? It gets turned into tomato sauce. People are swimming in it. Now, what do you think a ton of tomatoes that gets turned into, that's grade C tomatoes costs? I don't know. But I can tell you that a ton of tomatoes, I should actually research it one time, but I didn't. So therefore, I'm going to put out a number, which is ridiculous because I have absolutely no idea. But I'm going to say it's less than $500, right? Okay, I'll go bigger than that. Further research is necessary. Let's even say $1,000. I mean, you could buy a pound of tomatoes, right, for $1 during the right season, and these are being sold in massive bulk, and it's grade C. So I would think it's very safe to say it's less than $500, but I don't want to go out on a limit. Let's say $1,000. So when they get 140 tons of tomatoes, what does it cost the city of Bunal? Because the city, your municipality pays for the tomatoes. 140,000, right? 140,000 for those tomatoes. Why is the city paying $140,000 for tons of grade C tomatoes? Because the revenue brought in is far greater than that. they're bringing in millions of dollars of revenue. Now, the Sefer HaChinuch says that I'm allowed to cut down a tree, which is normally described as a wasteful activity, if it's very valuable. And I can make more money by cutting it down. So who says I can't destroy 140 tons of tomatoes if I'm going to make this city maybe the money they need for the whole year? $5 million in revenue, helping keep all those shopkeepers, hotel owners alive for most of the rest of the year. Because I get the feeling that the rest of the year, Bunel does not exactly have a booming tourist industry. Who says it's not okay? I don't know. It is really complicated. Now, by the way, let's look at the next slide. Oh, wait. Okay, by the way, this is a random slide in here. It should really belong after the next one. But if you want to talk about demons, okay? Some of you guys may have heard of a guy named Sean Parker. Has anyone here ever heard of Sean Parker? So Sean Parker was he was one of the early investors in Facebook. He started Napster, if I'm not mistaken, which was like a illegal downloading music site that got shut down, and then they got reopened as a legal one. He's one of the early investors in Facebook, and he actually, for example, he was the one who made the recommendation not to call it the Facebook, but rather Facebook.com, and he did a lot to promote it, and he's a he's a billionaire. He got married recently, and he decided that for his wedding the theme was going to be like a Hobbit theme, okay? So like he was going to make it in like a forest, wonderland. The forest he decided to do it in was the redwood forest in California. And he went in and he had people, they moved earth all over, they planted trees, they removed trees. They built little bridges, very elvish or hobbitish bridges, dwarfish, whatever, and they had characters. Now he ended up getting slammed with a $2.5 million fine by the EPA. But he knew that was going to happen, and he's like, okay, fine, no problem. It's part of the expense of the wedding. It's a $10 million wedding, $2.5 million is going to go to the EPA. But during the course of that, if you look at this picture, you see a massive redwood, right? I was fortunate enough to be at the redwood forest in California. Some of these redwoods were around during the time of the Second Temple. There are redwoods there that are literally 2,000 years old. Massive, towering, majestic trees. And they're very fragile. They've got a very elaborate type of bark that brings the moisture in and helps them stay alive. They've been through many forest fires and stayed alive. And that bark is very fragile. They tell you don't climb on the trees when you're there. Sean Parker, for his wedding, built little elfish, dwarfish, hobbitish, little walls right into the redwood trees. Demonic. Yes, it's got value for you. And yes, you're going to pay $2.5 million fine. That's not allowed. There's a lot of... Sometimes money is just not enough to say that's okay. It's not okay to destroy the redwood forests because you're going to pay $2.5 million for it. Or $25 million for it, for that matter. Those things have been around since the Second Temple era. And they're not going to be brought down for your little bucket of change. Now let's look at this for a moment. This, my friends, is the largest wedding cake ever. Okay? Source number 4, which is a news item from February 8th, 2004. Mohegan Sun Casino attempts to shatter the world record in Guinness Book of World Records. Today, at the New England Bridal Showcase, which was held at the Mohegan Sun Convention Center. Mohegan Sun is a casino in Connecticut. They unveiled what it hopes will be the world's largest wedding cake, measuring 17 feet tall and weighing 15,032 pounds The 7-tiered cake is almost 3 times the weight of the current record in the Guinness Book of World Records for the world's largest wedding cake. Now, the Mohegan Sun wedding cake is vanilla flavored, if you were wondering, and is decorated with bows and hearts. Ingredients include 10,000 pounds of pound cake batter and 4,810 pounds of creamy frosting with a taste of vanilla and almond. I'm glad they added the almond there. I was getting nervous. I was like, vanilla cake and vanilla cream? Is that really how you're going to do that? Blasé. I'm not taking part in that. But no, then they added the almond. They mixed it up a little. I'm getting more comfortable with it as we speak. Comparatively speaking, the cake weighs more than 5 Volkswagen Beetles and can feed up to 5,900 people. 59,000, thank you. Now, what about this? Is this allowed?
Yeah.
Now, afterwards, at the end of the convention, they're definitely going to cut up the cake and offer it to anybody who wants. And you know what? I'm sure they'll even send cake to the local shelters. But by the way, let me tell you something about shelter. I actually listened to a whole podcast about food banks and homeless shelters. They don't really need this kind of stuff. It's got no shelf life. Well, actually, some of these cakes they make today with all the preservatives, they've got like a shelf life of 4 months. I'm not even kidding, by the way. My brother one time asked somebody in Starbucks, because they have the same cakes just lying out there, you know? It's not kosher, by the way. I'm not affirming the kosherness of that. It's not kosher. But he asked them, like, how long can you keep this stuff? And they said, well, we have a book, and it tells us what the shelf life of each thing is. He said, well, what's the longest shelf life? There are items in your Starbucks case that it shows you of cake or pound cake or whatever it is. There are items in there that have a shelf life of 90 days. 90 days. Anything that can stay alive on a shelf for 90 days, how long does it stay in your body? Way too long, too. It's crazy. Okay. In any case, this cake. So the reality is, the shelters, they can only take so much cake, right? Okay, fine. You say, homeless people, we have cake today. All right, they'll come down, they'll eat a piece of cake. They're not going to eat 5,000 pounds of cake. So the reality is, I would assume, of course, I love making up random numbers, like we just did for the price of a ton of tomatoes in Extremadura, Spain. But I would assume maybe 5,000 pounds of this cake will get eaten. Let's go even bigger, 10,000, which means the majority of this cake is going to get wasted. Is that allowed? Now, does anybody see a distinction between this and La Tomatina? No? You do, Zelda. Go ahead. What's the distinction?
Well, if they're going to make that much money at La Tomatina, to keep them for the winter, there's at least an important factor there. It's giving to the community, where this is just kind of decadent, showy, and waste. Okay,
see, it's very interesting. Zelda says, in La Tomatina, that may support the community through their winter. That may be like their one big event that makes them fiscally in the black, able to make it through financially. Whereas this is just wasteful. The funny thing is, I happen to have a second perspective on this that's exactly the opposite. My perspective is that in Bunal, yes, there may be financial value to it. However, the very act of just being destructive like that, where you're gleefully destroying stuff, even though sometimes it's allowed. Sometimes you're allowed to destroy something because it has a greater value in its destruction than in its current form. But to do it with glee and joy and reckless abandon, I feel like just degrades the human spirit. You may have to cut down a tree, but do it with respect. Like you may have to, sometimes you got to put down a dog. But you don't do it with joy. That would be sick and twisted. You do it because you have, look at Harambe, right? Everyone's talking now about this gorilla in Cincinnati Zoo. And there's no question about it. Of course, there's a lot of people questioning this. So I'm saying that in my mind, there's no question about it. There's no question about it. They did the right thing. There's a child's life in danger. You kill the gorilla and save the human being. The Washington Post had a headline saying something that some people say, it wasn't saying that everybody says it, Some people say killing an endangered species is worse than murder. No, it's not. So there's so many kooks out there who are literally, they're sending death threats to the family and the parents, and I mean it's horrific what's going on. The internet goes crazy over these things. Hundreds of thousands of people are being slaughtered in Syria and Iraq every day. People, not hundreds of thousands every day, but every day, hundreds. And you don't hear a peep from anybody. And then suddenly a gorilla gets killed. Whoa! The internet explodes. Anger. Literally hundreds of thousands of people writing petitions to get this child removed from their parents' home by CPS. Because we never, ever, ever walked anywhere where we weren't holding our kid's hand the whole time, right? Of course not. We were all perfect parents. Our kid never wandered away and climbed on a fence. Never. So they had to kill the gorilla. They did the right thing, but they did it with sadness. Something about the Buno experience where you're just taking food and just with such glee destroying it, I feel like it does something to your soul. Over here, the cake itself is wasteful in the sense that it's not all going to be eaten. However, let's think about the economic idea. Where was this cake showcased? At a bridal showcase. They want to bring in vendors. They want to bring in potential brides, interior designers, wedding designers. They want to bring all these people in. So the fact that you have a Guinness Book of World Records cake there is going to bring more people in. They may stay in the hotel, Mohegan Sun Hotel and Casino. They may spend money at the casino. Right? As they come in to check out the cake, well, there happens to be a slot machine here that I've got a feeling about. Okay. It's complicated. And at the end of the day, they respectfully give the cake out to as many people as they can, and the rest gets put quietly in the dumpster. Again, did they waste food? Yes, they did. However, the cake itself, how much does 10,000 pounds of cake batter and 4,800 pounds of cake frosting cost? Here we go. Leiby's going to whip out a number again out of thin air. But I know that a pound of flour, you get a 5-pound sack of flour, costs about $2. So when you're buying it by 10,000 pounds, it's going to cost less than that. 10,000 pounds of flour with cake batter, talking about maybe, 10 grand, not even. And then the frosting, let's say another $5 grand. Again, I'm assuming very high prices here because I want to be very conservative. And then you got to pay a staff to make the cake and bake it and decorate it. So all in, probably $25,000 for this stunt. But the amount of advertisers and think how much free publicity they got. It's all over the world. Everyone knows the biggest birthday cake, Mohegan Sun Casino, bridal showcase. There's enormous value. Free advertising all over the world. And then at the end, they serve as many people as they can. They give it to shelters and whatever. And the rest gets respectfully put outside of the back. So here are two opposite perspectives. Which one is true? I don't know. I don't think either Mohegan Sun or the city of Buno asked a rabbi a question saying, are we allowed to do this? But the reality that I'm trying to point out is that there are certain cases that have a lot of complexity to them. Okay, now, what about pacification of anger? I am so angry right now. Just want to break something. And if I break something, it calms me down usually. It works. There are places, by the way, that have china. Like china that, Mikasa or whatever, but has a little crack, so Mikasa can't sell it. So these places buy tons of china, and they just stack it, and you go in there and you say, okay, and they charge you like, $2 for 10 plates. And you just buy the plates and you just throw them against the walls. There's places like that. Are you allowed to do that? Pacification of anger. I'm so angry right now, I feel like I'm going to beat my husband, but if I just smash this platter instead, I think we'll make it through the night. Is that allowed?
Sure.
Not at all. Says the Talmud, source number 5, Babylonian Talmud 105b. As we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said in the name of Chilfa bar Agro, said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, one who rips his clothing in anger, and one who breaks his dishes in anger, and one who scatters his money in anger, it should be in your eyes as if they served idols. Whoa. heavy, very heavy. Why? Why is it as if they served idols?
Lack of faith in God.
Well, for starters, when you get angry like that already shows a lack of faith in God, because you're saying this is not supposed to be happening. This is not supposed to be happening to me. Well, actually, it's exactly what's supposed to be happening to you right now. It's a challenge for you. It's a test for you, but it's custom designed for you. But also, when you break the dish, what you're saying is you're listening to this little voice that's saying, do something destructive to calm yourself down, to soothe yourself. And then you're just walking down a path to the point where you start serving that little voice in your head. And that little voice today says to you, break a dish. Tomorrow says, slap your kid. The next day, who knows what. When you start listening to that little voice that says, do this to make yourself feel better, you're listening to another God now. And it's like you're serving idols. By the way, you see this? It's not very clear, but it's an anger release machine. So you put your money into the soda machine, and you pit, B1, and then a nice little china figurette comes crashing down. It's an anger release machine. Now here is something fascinating, and this is what I said to you in the beginning. The Torah deals with these ethics so far in advance. Today, one of the greatest discussions we have is fuel economy. The wasting of carbon-based, products. Okay? Look at source number 6. I'll get to that in a second, actually. Okay. Source number 6 is fuel waste. Says the Talmud in Tractate Shabbos 67b, Rav Zutra said, a person who needlessly covers an oil lamp. Oil lamps, when you cover them, they burn hotter and the oil burns quicker. Okay, a little bit brighter, but a little bit quicker. Or needlessly uncovers a naphtha lamp. Naphtha, when you uncover it, it gets more air and it burns more brightly and more quickly. He transgresses Baal Tashchit. So naphtha and oil were two forms of fuel. And here, 1,500 years ago in the Talmud, we have a statement saying, if you waste fuel, you do Baal Tashchit. You ever see people, they leave their car running? I'm just running in to do an errand. Turn off your car. Just turn off your car first, and then go run and do your errand. It especially bothers me, I see this all the time, by the way, with police cars. You ever seen that? First of all, it's OPM, other people's money. I see that all the time, though. Cops just leave their cars outside, and their cars are running. And not only is it OPM, by the way, it's MM. It's my money. Oak Park. I see cars, police cars running all the time. I'm paying those taxes. Stop it, please. Can you turn off your engine?
So it is OPM. Oak Park's money.
No. Oak Park doesn't produce money. We, the people, produce money for OPM, for Oak Park. It's very bothersome. But even for yourself. Now this also comes to a question of buying a car. Are you allowed to buy a fuel guzzler? Not such a simple question. If you need it because you have to haul a lot of things, so you need to buy a car with a big engine, a pickup truck with a big engine, right? Okay, that's allowed. You need it for work. If you don't, are you allowed to buy a gas guzzler? Not a simple answer. Are you allowed to leave your appliances going when you walk out of the house? It's complicated. Not so simple. One thing, for example, there's this. Loading up the plate. The amount of food that gets thrown out at weddings, bar mitzvahs, social functions. We come to an event and we're starving hungry. So we want to eat everything. And we put everything on our plate. And then we discover that our stomach has limitations. Unfortunately. Well, fortunately. Don't load up the plate. It's going to make it much more likely that you're going to be taking food and scraping it off into the garbage at the end of your meal. So this ethic that we learned today, this idea of Baal Tashchis, while it contains some very complicated nuances, like Bunal, like Mohegan Sun, what we do learn is the overall message of seeing the value and the good of everything in this world and only wanting to see every bit of good being extracted out of everything that is good, and therefore being horrified by the wasting of any God-given product or gift and the destruction of such things as well. May God give us the ability to fully utilize all of our resources and be like the righteous who see good in everything and seek to bring that good to its fruition. And may we all have an amazingly good week. Thank you very much.